Mouthwashing is one of the most acclaimed indie horror games of recent years. It's the tale of an unravelling crew who are trapped in space after a freighter accident. It's gory, it's sometimes disturbing, and it goes to places that you really will not expect. If you like this spoiler-free review of the game, then please do give it a like to help more people find it. Subscribe to the channel to get more videos from me in your feed, and I will tell you all about this channel's wonderful Patreon community at the end. And with that said, let's get into it. This is my review of Mouthwashing. So I think it's safe to say that Mouthwashing is an instant cult classic horror game. It's an indie game made in Sweden by a small team of I think 5 people. It came out last year and it hit some Games of the Year lists, including a Game of the Year nomination from the inaugural Indie Game Awards. The game was made by Wrong Organ, the soundtrack is by Martin Haldin, and it was published by Critical Reflex. We're on a bit of a winning streak lately. Wrong Organ have said that the game's story was inspired by an experience they had making a previous game. Lead writer Joanna Kasurinen has said it was the state of a team trying to convince ourselves we can still fix this if we just try harder when everything was limping and on fire. That was what planted the seed. And I think that's a really interesting and astute take on this story. It's a very interesting seed for this story because it is about a lot of things going terribly wrong at once and about people trying to fix the unfixable to some degree. I think the cult status of this game was cemented by the fact that Lost in Cult are making a book about it, which is in production now, and it is being ported from Steam to Switch, PlayStation and Xbox, supposedly coming out this year. So it seems like a game that's going to have a lasting legacy, and I think that's a big tribute to the team who had only made one game together before. They really had a breakthrough here. It's been a smash hit, and I can see why. It's a game that is sticking in my mind. I finished it yesterday and I've barely stopped thinking about it. I really think this game's going to be with me for a while. It also did well with the critics. It has a Metacritic 88, an OpenCritic 82. Critics generally cited the story and the writing as high points. They also note that gameplay is a low point. Some critics called out certain sections as being frustrating or feeling unnecessary or like busy work. I'm actually in line with all of that. I think that the gameplay pulls the game down quite a lot at certain points, but that ultimately, looking back at it now, I think the 8 out of 10 plus seems like a fair score to me. The developers described the game by saying the 5 crew members of the Tulpar are stranded in the empty reaches of space, shrouded in perpetual sunset. God is not watching. I have to say of this one that Mouthwashing is a slowly unravelling space crew nightmare that looks unflinchingly into the horror that can reside in the human heart. As a gameplay experience, it's lacking, but as a narrative one, it's essential, if not for the faint of heart. So Mouthwashing is about a 3-hour narrative game set on a crashed space freighter. You wander around the freighter in first person. It is a small network of rooms and corridors, stairways, storerooms and bays and that kind of thing. And they all have a grimy, discomforting feel to them, especially because the freighter has been in an accident. How the accident happened is one of the central mysteries of the game. There are lots of time skips, so we'll see it in the lead up, during the accident, and then afterwards. Before the accident, it's all quite clean and tidy. There is a dining room with a big illuminated panel that simulates day, sunset, morning, noon, etc. to make the crew feel at ease. And then a small selection of other rooms, like a medical bay, the mechanical room, the engine room, the cockpit, etc. And there is a smallness and claustrophobia to the ship that I really enjoyed. But the game begins when we see someone basically sabotaging the ship. We play as them, and we are forced to do what they do. A bit like in Last of Us 2, when you're playing as Ellie and you only have one button prompt and it's to do something that you really don't want to do. So we as the player sabotage the ship and we have no option but to do so. And because it's first person, we don't know who we're playing as at that moment. We steer the ship towards an asteroid, we disengage the autopilot, and then we leave the cockpit and lock it. The story picks up in the aftermath of that accident, and it has transformed the interior of the ship. Safety foam has been dispensed everywhere to try and seal any cracks and maintain the habitability of the crew area, and it has led to a kind of macabre, fake snow, puffy foam just taking over the entire ship, which gives it a really effective, creepy disaster zone kind of feel right from the off. And it turns out that the captain was horrifically maimed in the accident. He is lying in the medbay, bandaged from head to toe, and that's that iconic, horrible image that is used often to promote mouthwashing in the key art and so forth, and you have to open his mouth occasionally and give him painkillers as just one of the many unwanted duties that you've taken on as his second in command. We'll spend the game trying to contain the situation, talking to the remaining crew, all of whom are going through it, and slowly piecing together what happened through flashbacks, through dialogue clues, some subtle, some between the lines, and some not so subtle. And as the crew start to unravel, we learn more about their pasts and who they are, and that's what the game really is. It's all about getting to the bottom of the mystery of what happened to this ship, of what happened to the Tupa. So there are various aspects to the game. You'll spend a lot of time schlepping around the ship, looking at objects like a fire axe, a medicine cabinet, the captain's closet in the cockpit and that kind of thing. You're also talking to the characters who have these textural faces that are kind of mapped onto their model in that PS1 style. I really enjoyed the visuals of this game actually. It's giving grimy PS1, PS2 era, a little bit of 1980s VHS tape roll thrown in there when you're looking at like crap corporate videos, or the sort of the sound system and the visuals of the ship. And there's a little bit of 90s corporate speak in these ostensibly motivational but actually threatening safety posters that do things like trying to tell you to be safe and not have accidents, but then underline that by saying that any medical expenses will be taken from your paycheck in true cyberpunk style. And I really did enjoy the architecture and the art style and the different spaces that you inhabit, like that crew room with the fake weather going on, giving different moods to different scenes. We will also get some abstract scenes that are perhaps a depiction of someone going through something psychologically. So there's some quite wild hallucinogenic stuff in there as well. And I enjoyed walking around the ship, I enjoyed the signage, I enjoyed the environment, and it does a lot with a little, and the art style is awesome basically. There is also a bit of gameplay thrown in there in the form of light stealth and light puzzling that I think the game could honestly have done without, and I will get to why, but I think Mouthwashing also does a lot of stuff incredibly well. The story is a truly nasty little horror that unfolds like a slow motion car crash where you can see what's coming, but you can do little to stop it. It is a human horror story that doesn't need monsters or, you know, the cosmic or metaphysical. It's really all about the horrors of what lies in the human heart. And when I say it is unflinching, some of the stuff that goes on deserves a trigger warning for basically everything. And the horror in this game comes from various sources. There are bad vibes throughout. The characters are all pretty bad vibes in their own ways. And there is a Pony Express mascot. The company that you work for is called Pony Express. It has a pony mascot that looks like a piece of corporate pop art, but gets more and more horrifying, rasping out some kind of creepy motivational statement. And the game also uses non-Euclidean spaces, glitching, rolling, and other graphical trickery to simulate the claustrophobia and the general unraveling of the crew. And that is the most interesting crux of this, I think. It's a story about people who are stuck together in an unraveling situation. Seeing what happens is both hypnotic and horrifying, like you couldn't look away, even if you wanted to. It has a sense of mounting disaster, and you're just along for the ride. I always loved the dialogue sequences. I exhausted every single bit of dialogue that I could get, but there are also a set of quite unwieldy gameplay sequences shoehorned in here. It's like the developers thought they needed to give the player some stuff to do, but I think this is definitely the worst part of the game. There is a very clunky sequence where you're supposed to prepare a meal, which is thematically on point but mechanically pretty bad. There is a machine you're supposed to use that's like a fabricator for ingredients that just doesn't look like one. It looks like a grilled sandwich maker, so it didn't read to me as what I was supposed to use it for. So that led to an unfortunate moment where I was just staring at the game, wanting the story to continue but not sure what the game wanted from me for that to happen. And there were several frustration flashpoints. There are some maze-like stealth sections that really don't feel like they belong in the game. I think it would have been okay to think of this as a narrative-forward game that doesn't need monster sections or fake tension or chase sequences or anything like that. And I get why they're in there, but I think it would have been braver to just have this as a pure narrative game with walking simulator and dialogue elements. I think that would be more true to what Mouthwashing is. I think those sections feel a little obligatory and underdeveloped, and they actually got in the way of the pacing, in my opinion. There's also quite a bit of schlepping around the same few corridors, which I think could have been tightened up a little bit, maybe with some smash cuts like in Virginia or 30 Flights of Loving or other Blendo games that use smash cuts, just to get you from A to B quickly and to move the story on. So I think if it were me, I would have edited the game down a bit, which might sound strange in a 3-hour game, but I think it could have been a 2-hour game that was better. I definitely think the end game dragged on a little bit with some obscure gameplay sections that took the sting out of the storytelling. It's not that fun to be wrestling with a minigame when you really just want things to move along, you know. So there we go. I think that the gameplay stuff puts a big dent in Mouthwashing, but the story is so good that I think the 8 out of 10 score holds. The story is unusual, memorable, mature, subtle, and I found myself lying up at night just thinking about the things that this crew did. They are a range of quite broken people that have been stuck together in this high pressure situation for months on end, and it's a little bit about what happens when we peel back the layers of civilization and see what lies beneath. Some of what happens lies between the lines. You have to be attentive to dialogue, but I think that it's gettable. There are enough clues for the keen-eyed player, or at least a player that is paying a normal amount of attention, to understand what is happening, which I like. I don't like having to go to Reddit to try and understand what I just played particularly. And I can't spoil why the story is as good as it is. You're going to have to play it to find out. But I will say that our opinions of these characters will evolve in a really cool way. They handle the crash in different ways. They have growing hopelessness and how they handle that. We have the grumpy stoic mechanic who becomes much less stoic as time passes. We have the intern who really shouldn't be there, who doesn't understand understand that this is getting serious, doesn't quite grasp the mortal seriousness of what is happening around him in quite a relatable way, I would say. There is that wounded captain whose role in the story we will need to decipher over time. There is the navigator who is trying to handle what happened and pick up the pieces, and like everyone in this game has a past that will come out. And then we have the medic who is visibly shaken by everything that's happened and other stuff in their past as well. And all of the writing is spare and punchy, the conversations are short and to the point, and we get a really good sense of who these people are in relatively few words, which I always really respect. It really does become like an ensemble cast piece, a little bit like Alien. I did think about the Nostromo and the characters of the film Alien while I was playing this game. Even though it's not a monster piece, it's certainly about a crew that are fraying at the edges. I thought about Event Horizon as well. So some real cinematic sci-fi horror greats, I would say. And I really do think that if anyone were to pick up the script of Mouthwashing and the scenario and make it into a dramatization, either for TV or cinema, it could be something really interesting. And I think that speaks to the power of the script of this game. It really is a story that will keep you thinking and has twists, turns, and dark depths. So as is traditional, I will run through some of the good and bad points. Good, the grimy art, the foreboding soundtrack, which we're listening to right now. I think it's a really good Vangelis style soundtrack, although it does have those Ben Frosty noise tracks as well, and some kind of cheesy corporate background hold music in there. Really good soundtrack. It has effective horror throughout the game, the use of corporate pop art imagery, motivational posters, tight corridors, synthetic day-night cycle, the darkness, the lights going out, the sounds of the ship. I really like the screen glitches that sometimes occur. There's like digital interruptions to what you're watching, giving narration to what might be happening inside someone's head, and all of this adds up to an urgent sense of mounting disaster. The use of food in the game is really startling at times. It's a motif that you will see in a couple of key scenes, and the story that ties it all together is unflinchingly bleak. It really is the dark heart of human horror. As for the downsides, I've been through it already, so I don't need to restate everything, but I think the pacing is sometimes a bit sluggish due to the walking and wandering, especially some sequences that are in low light, so you can't really see where you're going. Some of the gameplay just isn't there. I think the cooking section, the stealth, the mazes, the visual puzzles are a bit off. I think one critique I have of this game is directorially, the pacing is sometimes thrown off, and the narrative delivery is sometimes thrown off. As well done as it is, with time skips going back and forward and the reveals and the intentionality of all that, the gameplay sections don't add to it, they actually detract from it. I think some of that gameplay stuff could have quite easily been put on the cutting room floor, left behind in service of giving a tighter, more focused narrative experience. But none of that detracts from just how good that story is, and I still think this is a must-play for fans of the genre. So that's my mouthwashing review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do give it a like if you've listened this far. You can subscribe to the channel for more like this. Let me know in the comments what you thought of mouthwashing. And if you're in the mood for some more indie horror games, I will put a link up on the screen now for a video where I run through 10 grimy indie horror games, all of which have something interesting going on and that you might be interested in for spooky season. If you have gotten this far, I would also say that you are someone who might enjoy the Gaming in the Wild Discord. It's for patrons only, but you can support this channel, support me as a content creator, and join the community for as little as $1 a month. I will throw a link up on the screen now for the Patreon. You also get behind the scenes blogs with my thinking on these videos, with some extra podcasts about travel, books, culture, and things other than games. And I really do think that the Gaming in the Wild Discord, because it is a patron only community, is people that just love indie games, that want to talk about them, share them, discover them. It is a wonderful place to hang out and talk about games, and you're invited. So patreon.com/gaminginthewild, link on the screen now. Support me, get the extras, join the community. And as always, a huge thank you to my boss tier patrons at the very top tier: Shy Guy, King Champ, Nate, Keris, and Susanna Maria. And with that, I'm signing off, so until the next one, take care of yourselves and each other, and bye-bye for now.